crew, Stefi Cohen here. Welcome to another YouTube video. Today I'm going to be taking you through my entire workout and talking a little bit more about where I'm at in terms of training and what my short and long-term goals are moving forward for the rest of the year. If you've been following me on social media, you've been seeing that my training has changed quite a bit. The competition schedule changed a ton, and I actually saw it as an opportunity to work on other things and give my body a little bit of a rest from heavy lifting and powerlifting specific workouts. So for the time being, I'm going to be training a lot more like a bodybuilder, really focusing on specific areas that I've been intending to strengthen and to grow. For that, I'd be working with Ben. He's a pretty well accomplished bodybuilder, and he's going to be the one guiding me through this entire process. The whole goal behind this is to potentially compete in either figure or wellness, or potentially just do a photo shoot for the cover of the magazine. I still don't know. At the same time, I've been training a little bit of boxing to just kind of fall in love with fitness again. It's been so monotonous the last couple of years, and I've been so focused on achieving specific goals that are just related with lifting a certain amount of weight, and that can certainly, you know, bore you, and you can lose motivation a lot easier. So I just need a break from that and just have some fun inside of the gym. The transition to bodybuilding has been really fun, and it's still extremely challenging. I used to think that bodybuilding was easy, and that's because I'm a powerlifter, and for me bodybuilding was just 3 sets of 10 or 3 sets of 12 of whatever exercise without thinking about it. And I got checked real quick when I went to train with Ben, and he took me through a real bodybuilder session, and I really loved it. I love this challenge. I love having to really focus on that mind-body connection and getting the right muscles to fire for a movement. My mindset really needs to shift from trying to do a movement to trying to get a muscle to work. And ultimately, it's not necessarily about increasing the weight of an exercise, which is kind of the powerlifter's mindset that we carry into our accessories as well. But it's about making the exercise subjectively more difficult without making it objectively heavier. So all that means is you're going to be taking a muscle through its full range of motion. You're going to be concentrating on targeting that muscle, squeezing in the end range, and really getting a good contraction. So a big focus of, at least like this, the beginning stages of the training is trying to find a way, or the exercises that are right for my body, so I can get those body parts that are lacking to grow. Our focus is going to be mainly on building bigger delts, bigger biceps, bigger glutes, and a smaller waist. So there's actually a huge focus on breathing and controlling the muscles of the abs. Our 2 first sessions were, we started with posing to kind of get the control of your diaphragm and control of your abs to get the shape that you want when you're in front of the camera, whether that's for posing or for a shoot, I guess. So I guess that's a lot of talking. I don't want to bore you too much with too much of this, so let's get into it. The first exercise we're going to do is a lying down leg curl, and this is going to be a pre-exhausting set before we start doing our main lift for the day, which is a heel elevated front squat. So the main goal here with the lying leg curl is to really get the hamstrings to fire, both at the lengthened end and the shortened end. So essentially, what you want to be doing is you want to draw your belly button in, and you want to posteriorly tilt your hips so that your hamstrings are anchored, essentially, because they attach all the way in here under your glute. And so if you allow your pelvis to move out and in like that, you're not really lengthening the hamstring as the best that you could, or challenging the hamstring as best as you could. So really focus on posteriorly tilting your pelvis and keeping it in that position throughout the entire set. Ideally, you would have a workout partner that helps you at the point of the movement where it's the most challenging. So that's like the top. The more fatigue that you get, the harder it is to reach that peak contraction. The next exercise we have is a heel elevated front squat. So this one, we targeted the hamstrings with the lying down hamstring curl. Now we're going to target the quads. Again, it's everything is about peak contractions, really focusing on getting the quads to fire throughout the entire motion of the movement. All right, next we have stationary lunges with a glute emphasis. So, like I said, big focus of our program is going to be on growing the glutes, and this is going to require me to pretty much retrain a lot of the movements and movement patterns that I've been doing because I'm so quad dominant, and it's really hard to get outside of that if I don't really focus. So the main thing, if you're trying to target your glutes when you're doing a walking lunge, or mainly the glutes, I guess, because you're also targeting the quads, is going to be not allowing the knee to come forward. So the bigger the range of motion in a particular joint, the more challenge is going to be placed on that particular muscle. So if the largest joint angle change is going to be at the knee, then that means that you're targeting the quads to a greater extent. Now, we want to do that for the glutes. The glutes are your hip extensors, so you want the greatest angle change to happen at the hip. So what you're going to do, you're going to keep that leg at 90 degrees angles, and you're going to really focus on putting your body weight on that leg that's in front. So even on the way down, you want to place most of your weight on that front leg, almost none on the back leg, and really focus on the contraction on your glute on the way down. There you pause, you really engage the glute, and you initiate the movement or the contraction of the standing up of the lunge with the contraction of the glute. A lot more challenging on the left side than on the right side, so it requires a little bit more focus. But again, a learning process. I think for me, coming from a powerlifting background, it's a little bit frustrating to have to do all of these movements so slow and with so much focus, because the goal in powerlifting is just to move the weight however you can, no matter which muscle is working the hardest, right? We tend to compensate and use the muscles that are easier for us to access, whereas here it's the complete opposite. We're trying to access the parts of the muscle or the muscles that are most difficult for us to contract. So it's almost like I'm taking a step back in terms of how I'm used to training and trying to learn a little bit more about how my body works and what needs to be more emphasized or less emphasized in my program. Next up, we have leg extensions. Only 2 sets of 10, which is nice after everything else that I've done, but not so nice because after that I have stiff-legged deadlifts. So I'm gonna try to conserve some energy here. Obviously push myself hard, but not too hard so I can complete the rest of the session. After this I have 3 more exercises, so I'm gonna have to pace myself a little bit. So with the leg extension, again, making sure that you're contracting at every single point of the range of motion of the movement, especially at the top, taking my time throughout the entire movement and not doing it with any sort of momentum. Big common misconception when it comes to leg extension is that it's bad for your knees. I don't know when that started, when that thought process started within the fitness community, but I want to take my time now that I'm doing it to debunk that thought process. I don't even know why people started thinking about it that way, but I guess, look, leg extension is no different than any other movement that you do at the gym. Like anything else, if you start doing something without a proper progression, you'll eventually end up getting hurt. It doesn't matter what it is. It could be walking, it could be jogging, running, it could be shoulder raises, whatever you do that you're not accustomed to doing. If you progress too fast, it's called the acute to chronic workload ratio, you'll end up getting hurt. So the key point here is, if you've never done leg extensions, then start with 1 set a week, then 2 sets, then 3, then maybe twice a week. And that, just progress it in an intelligent manner, and don't go crazy, and you'll be okay. It's extending your leg in that way is a perfectly natural movement. Yeah, you're never sitting down and putting a load. That's the argument I guess people like to use, that there's a lot of shear happening inside of the knee. But your body can tolerate shear, your body can tolerate compression, your body can tolerate load and forces being applied from multiple directions. as long as the progression is right. So there's no movement that's bad for you. It's just the unpreparedness for movement that leads to compensations and leads to pathology, essentially. Stiff leg deadlift at 80%, 2 sets of 20. I don't think I've ever done a set of 20 deadlifts, honestly. The most I've done is 10 reps. So, totally new to me. Honestly, I don't even know if I can do 20 reps. We'll see. What's the purpose of this session? Targeting hammering the glutes. Easy to overcompensate, easy to start using other muscles, but we've got to bring that focus back to the muscle group that we're targeting. In this case, it's the glutes. Again, greatest joint angle change has to be coming from the hips, so I'm gonna have to figure out a way to position my body in a way that targets my glutes the most. So in this case, actually had a session with Ben last week, and I guess I was doing my stiff leg deadlifts like a powerlifter. I guess it makes sense. But what he recommended to me was that you slightly anteriorly tilt your hips, keep the barbell close to you, focus on maintaining the same joint angle at the knees, and focus on having the greatest change at the hips. So you want to really throw the hips back, slight anterior tilt, really big stretch of the hamstrings at the bottom, slowing the tempo, slowing it a little, or maybe pausing a little bit at the bottom so you really feel the contraction, and then trying to maintain that contraction even at the top. So you don't want to come all the way to the top and hyperextend and lose the contraction of the hamstrings and the glutes. You want to almost cut the movement short just a tiny bit so that you can maintain the contraction. Same goes for the stationary lunges that we were doing. You want to do that same thing. You want to keep that focus on the glute even when you come up. You don't want to relax at the top. You want to always make sure that the glute is contracting on the way up, down, on the way up. 2 sets of 10 heel elevated goblet squat. This is one of my favorite movements actually. Obviously you're limited by the amount of weight that you can hold in front of you as opposed to the front squat that allows you to load a little bit better. So it makes sense that this exercise is towards the end of the session, used again as more of an accessory exercise rather than an output or strength movement like the front squat or the stiff-legged deadlift was. Obviously we want to choose an effort that is challenging. You don't want to go too light in any of these exercises. You want to make sure that the load is always picked appropriately. And it's challenging, but it's not taking away from, again, the contractions, right? Because we tend to compensate more as the movement becomes more difficult for us. We start moving into patterns. Why are you laughing? Why are you laughing?
I'm not.
You're distracting me. We start moving into patterns that we are used to doing, and that again takes away from the focus of the muscle. So don't pick up a weight that distracts you too much from targeting the muscles that you're trying to target, but don't pick a weight that's too light that is not really doing anything. So, I mean, I would grab the 250-pound dumbbells, but we don't have any of those here, so I'm gonna have to settle for the 80-pound dumbbells for my warm-up set. All right. Exercise and last exercise of this session, we have hip thrust, 2 sets of 15. You can do this anywhere. I think Preferred way would be doing it on the sissy squat machine because it's just so easy to load. Just keeps the weight where it needs to be. Obviously, if you have a hip thrust machine, that's even better, but not a lot of people have access to that. But you can do it in any way. Today I'm going to be doing it with a dumbbell just because it's the most convenient in terms of equipment. I'm going to be using a pad to protect my hips. And again, focus is on quality of the movement, not necessarily on weight. Which is the biggest challenge for me. She's helping.
Do you need help taking it off too or no?
Alright, so some tips for performing the hip thrust movement. You want to achieve peak muscle contraction at the top of the movement. All that means is I want you to squeeze your butt cheeks as hard as you can at the top of the movement while you posteriorly tilt your hips. So you want to tuck your hips in, down, whatever you want to call it. Hold that contraction and literally squeeze your glutes to a 10 out of 10 contraction as hard as you can. Now, on the way down, you want to utilize your hip flexors to get you into the right position. So as the weight is coming down, you want to engage your hip flexors and purposefully bend at your hips. At the bottom of the movement, still focus on maintaining that glute contraction and focus on initiating the upwards face of the hip thrust with your glutes and not any other muscle. Another thing that you can do is place a little platform on your heels and try to keep your toes off the floor and bring your toes as close to your body as you can while maintaining a 90-degree angle. Closer you can get your feet, the more emphasis is on the glutes. If you place your feet a little bit farther, you're gonna be emphasizing a little bit more the hamstrings. So again, for the purpose of the session, glutes and hamstrings, mainly glutes for me. So I'm gonna be focusing on a closer stand, probably elevating my heels for the next set, and focusing on keeping my toes off the floor. Now you can also do these accessory movements without your shoes on, so you can even focus more on what your feet are doing and how it's feeling throughout the movement. That is all for me today, Animal Pack family. I hope you enjoyed this video. That's a glimpse of what my training is looking like currently and for the foreseeable future. If you have any more questions for me as far as my training or anything else that you want, please feel free to drop it down in the comment section below. Don't forget to like this video, subscribe to the Animal channel, and if you want to find me, you can always find me at Stefi Cohen on Instagram or Stefi Cohen on YouTube. And thank you so much for your time, for watching, for your support. Love, as always, from me, and I'll catch you guys next time. Peace.